Hi everybody, hope you're safe and well. This next video, 5.2, will take us into the basics of chords and the basics of chord reading. In the last video, we talked a little bit about how Hal Leonard introduces the chords in easy versions and talked about the way to read chords in the Hal Leonard book as it was presented initially with the slash marks, each representing a one-beat quarter note strum. Throughout your development as a chord player, though, sometimes you will get a suggested strumming pattern and sometimes you won't. Sometimes the chords are just written above the music. And we're going to explore a little bit about chord basics and chord tablature in this video, just to try to get you used to what to look for and how to strum the correct chord strings. So just a review, one major point here, the melody is the tune of the song, something a singer would do. Single note, one at a time, so think the singer's part or something you can hum or sing, obviously. And the other aspect, which is the supportive role or the accompaniment role that holds up that tune or melody, is the harmony. So melody is single notes, harmony is chords, notes that are in harmony together or harmonizing together. So when we look at guitar in this aspect, we approach it in a pretty different way. We look at pictures of chords as opposed to what we've been doing so far, which is single notes and looking at the musical staff and looking at pitch as it is placed on the musical staff with letter names and tablature. Now, both of these are going to be major parts of this class. Converting notes to tablature and tablature to notes, in other words, finding notes on your guitar, is one half of this class content, and chord understanding and recognition and playing is the other half of the content. So when we looked at the last chapter 4 in Distler, we were doing tablature that used lines that represented the strings that went horizontally, and it went from left to right as the music happens and as we read it on the staff. Low sound on the bottom, high sound on the top. 6th string on the bottom, 1st string on the top. But now we're looking at chord diagrams, and this was something that Distler introduced very early on in chapter 1, and that the Hal Leonard book introduced as early as string 1. They showed us a diagram like this and mapped out where the notes were at. And of course, page 47 is going to be like our vocabulary list of chords. And all of the vertical lines here going up and down are strings, and the nut is shown, and all of the horizontal lines are the frets. And so it is like your guitar looking right back at you. The circled numbers in this case are not string numbers. Okay, remember we said ideally, or most often, the string numbers are shown as circled numbers. But in this case, they've taken the finger dots and they've told us what left-hand finger we want to use. 1, 2, 3, or 4. And they've placed them on the fretboard. Notice the finger dots are written in between the frets. Never write on the frets, because the person can't tell who's looking at your chart what, including me when I'm correcting them, what fret you're in. So make sure you write in between the frets and on the string only, okay? And the little zeros, we should say, the little zeros on these Distler charts, the Hal Leonard charts, those are open string indications. So this is the nut, and that would mean you're not fretting that string, but you're playing it open. And the little X means do not include that string. It's going to be important to understand which strings to include and which not to include. If you include the wrong notes, it's going to distort your chord. So Distler goes on to say, after introducing the type of tablet you're going to use, a couple of physical things. Left-hand fingers are placed to the left of the fret, but as close as possible to the fret. If you remember some of the discussion early on the first day and in the first Zoom meetings about holding the guitar, or my first videos, I should say, you can always get a clear sound if you play close to the fret. If you start to move your finger away from the fret, it will buzz and won't make a good contact to the string. This is true of a chord when I'm trying to hold multiple notes down at the same time. And so I want to check each individual note as I'm playing the group. You want to stand up your fingers. It says use the thumb as a guide behind the neck with pressure at the middle joint, not at the tip. Imagine the thumb parallel to the frets, opposite the second middle finger. Now, this is the kind of thing I want you guys to be very aware of as a guitar player when you hear rules like this. Not everybody's hand is the same. Not everybody's technique is an ability physically, I don't just mean mentally, but physically is not the same either. And when you hear a rule that says your thumb should be sort of in a fixed position and matching up with this finger, not always something you should consider in stone as a technique rule. So for example, just as a quick aside here, when I play chords, my thumb does rise over the fretboard a little bit. We've had questions about fretting notes with your thumb. We're not talking about that, and you don't want to bring your thumb over this far for any of these chords per se, but my thumb will move forward. Look, notice the 45-degree angle. I'm not parallel with the frets right now when I play a C chord. And my thumb is down and I'm on the pad. So when she says the middle of the finger, we're thinking more of this pad and not on the tip joint. We don't want this. If you're up on the tip, it's going to be difficult to play, and it's a sign of tension. So relax. The thumb joint should be relaxed. The wrist should be relaxed. And I'm able to stand up all my fingers and, again, move towards the fret wire itself. When I play G, notice my thumb comes over a little bit. It's at a completely different angle from when I played C, when I played G. And my wrist is rolling. So, again, these are technical things to think about. My wrist is, again, the open the doorknob motion. When I play C, my hand rolls this way, and my pinky and third finger come up. When I play G, I roll a different direction. When I play a D chord, my hand rolls back the other way, and I am sort of in the middle. I'm not one way or the other, but my thumb again is peeking over the top a little bit, and now is not as far one direction as it was for G and the other direction as it was for C, and I'm sort of in the middle. So when you go to play a chord like D, when you have fingers stacking up in a fret, you're going to need to adjust your wrist in order to do that comfortably. I can't keep my wrist parallel to the fretboard and play that chord comfortably. I have to open it up a little bit. So keep those things in mind. You want to stand on your tips. You can't touch the other string, so you must be up on your tips and not this fleshy part of your finger, but up on the tips. And you're going to notice if your nail is too long, you will be scratching against the fretboard. This goes for everybody. You're going to have to be diligent about cutting your left-hand nails in particular so that they are, of course, not too short, because that could be painful too, but that they are short enough that they do not scratch against the fretboard. So if you feel them scratching on the wood, you know they're too long and you want to take them back a little bit. So close to the fret wire, flexible wrist, thumb and forearm can rotate and move around. You're on the pad of your thumb and not the tip. Keep all those things in mind, tips of your fingers, and try not to touch other strings. It's going to take some practice. I myself had a real problem playing the D chord as a young player and just touched the other strings all the time, and it took a while to get used to the exact hand position I had to have in order to do that. So moving forward, after kind of presenting those tips, guidelines for playing the correct chord strings. Well, a single note is, again, something we do one at a time, and we've done in the notation series or chapters, and we talk about melodies this way. A single note is designated by a letter name only, and for example, we would call it an A or a C sharp or a D. A chord is also designated by a letter name, but it's written above the staff, not on the staff. A chord is the sound produced by playing 3 or more strings. So Hal Leonard said more than 2 notes. This is saying 3 or more, because you could have chords that have more than the basic 3-note requirement. So Hal Leonard did not get into this at all. Distler says, by definition, a chord requires 3 or more letters played and blended together. And that is definitely true. It's a musical rule, and it's called a triad. On the music staff, a chord would have 3 or more different notes, and they would be stacked on top of each other, all vertically in the same spot. Only one letter, however, lends the chord its name. Chords are identified by this letter, and the name is got different qualities. So the chord is identified by a letter like A, but it could say A with a little m, which is A minor. If the chord just has a capital letter, it's a major chord, and we don't say A major unless we need to make that distinction to somebody. We just say A most commonly. I'm playing an A chord, and it's assumed it's major. If I say A minor, we then have made a distinction between the capital A and the capital A with the little m. Anytime there's an M on the chord, it's considered minor. You may have remembered I talked about numbers too, and when we discuss scales, that numbers are measured from the root note. If A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, D is 4. So you may see a number on a chord, like on our chord list, we have a whole row of 7th chords. And those 7th chords actually have 7 letter names above the root added to the chord. So again, the number indicates a measurement from the root. The root is the name of the chord. That brings me to the third point. A single note which gives the whole chord its letter name is termed the root. That's the number 1 and the starting point from measuring all the other notes in the chord. Just like a scale, you have a root note and then you build from there. Every letter name has an interval number above the root. The root is rather like an initial for the entire chord spelling. The other letters are understood as learned from the study of chord construction and the chord symbol system. Some examples would be the root of a C chord is C. The root of an E minor chord is E. So if I play a little bit of that, the root of a C chord, there's a C, and there's the root. You can hear it's kind of the center of that chord. There's E minor, and there's the root. The root of B flat 7 is B flat. Again, more dissonant with a 7 chord, and F sharp diminished, even more dissonant. There's the F sharp. So each one of those chords has a root, and then the letters, depending on their distance from the root, will give the chord its definition or quality, and hence its name. The biggest rule here now to end the video with is the lowest tone in which you're going to play, the lowest string, the lowest tone, should be the one that is the root. So if you're playing a C chord, the root should be C. If you're playing a D chord, the root, the lowest sound, should be D, closest to your face, where the pick starts. The root of a G chord should be low G. The root of an E should be a low E. So I'm going to stop this video here. Again, those are some real basic beginning tips for chord playing. We're going to get into playing the correct strings in the next video. Thanks, and have a great day.